They're blaming you. The words hit harder than the flashing cameras outside the emergency entrance. You were driving too fast. You almost killed her. You wanted the insurance money. A microphone was shoved so close to my face that it brushed my chin. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not because I had nothing to say, but because every word I spoke would be twisted before sunset. The automatic hospital doors slid open. A dozen reporters surged forward. Mr. Carter, is it true your wife may never return to acting? Did your marriage fall apart before the accident? Were you arguing in the car? Security forced them back while I stood frozen beneath the harsh white lights, my clothes still stained with dried blood. Not mine. Emily's. 3 hours earlier, my famous wife had been laughing at something on her phone while I kept both hands on the steering wheel. Then a truck ignored a red light. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. Everything became darkness. Now the entire country had already decided I was guilty. I walked back into the intensive care unit without another word. The room smelled of disinfectant and machines. Emily lay motionless beneath crisp white sheets, a bandage wrapped around her forehead. The woman whose smile had appeared on billboards across every major city looked impossibly fragile. Her manager, Vanessa, folded her arms the moment she saw me. You should leave. I ignored her. The doctors said immediate family can stay. Her expression tightened. You've done enough. Before I could respond, Emily's fingers twitched. A nurse hurried over. She's waking up. Every monitor around the bed began beeping faster. Slowly, Emily opened her eyes. Confusion filled them first. Then fear. Finally, recognition. Ethan. I'm here. I reached for her hand. She suddenly flinched away. Her breathing quickened. Why? She stared at me as though hearing something impossible. No. Her eyes darted around the room. Who's talking? Vanessa frowned. No one is talking. Emily pressed trembling hands against her ears. Stop. The nurse looked alarmed. Mrs. Carter, stay calm. They won't stop. Her voice cracked. So many voices. The doctor rushed inside. What voices? Emily looked around wildly. Everyone. She swallowed hard. I can hear everyone thinking. Silence filled the room. Vanessa exchanged a worried glance with the doctor. The doctor spoke gently. Head trauma can sometimes cause auditory hallucinations. No, Emily shouted. You're thinking I'm hallucinating. The doctor froze. His expression changed. Emily whispered before he spoke another word. You were about to recommend another CT scan. The doctor's face lost all color. How did you know that? The room became unnaturally quiet. Emily slowly turned toward Vanessa. You think this will destroy my career? Vanessa stumbled backward. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Emily's breathing became uneven again. Then, her eyes settled on me. For one terrifying second, I wondered what she would hear. Her expression softened. You're blaming yourself. I looked down. Because she was right. If I had taken another route. If I had noticed the truck 1 second earlier. If. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. You're not thinking about yourself at all. Her voice became almost fragile. You're wondering whether I'll hate you. I couldn't speak. Because that thought had never stopped echoing inside my own mind. Outside the room, someone knocked. Another nurse entered nervously. There are detectives waiting. Vanessa immediately stepped forward. They're here already? They need to ask Mr. Carter some questions. Emily's head snapped toward the doorway. The moment the detective entered, she gasped. His face remained perfectly calm. But Emily whispered before he introduced himself. You don't believe the crash was an accident. The detective stopped walking. Neither of us spoke. He finally asked quietly. Who told you that? Emily looked horrified. No one. She lowered her trembling hands. I heard it. The detective stared at her for several long seconds. Then his attention shifted toward me. Mr. Carter. His voice became noticeably more serious. I believe we need to discuss something. The interrogation room felt colder than the hospital. Detective Marcus Hale placed several photographs across the table. The crushed remains of my sedan. Skid marks. A traffic camera image. You've already seen these? I nodded. What exactly are you suggesting? He folded his hands. The truck driver insists his brakes failed. And our forensic team isn't convinced. For the first time all night, hope flickered inside me. You mean, we're still investigating? His tone remained careful. But someone tampered with that vehicle. I stared at him. So this wasn't random. We don't know. He slid another photograph toward me. But there's something else. A blurry figure. standing near the truck hours before the crash. Face hidden beneath a cap. Security cameras caught him. Have you identified him? Not yet. He leaned closer. I'll ask you directly. Does your wife have enemies? I almost laughed. Emily wasn't merely famous. She was adored. Millions followed everything she did. Brand endorsements, award shows, charity events. She smiled beautifully for everyone. But fame created shadows. Obsessive fans, rejected actors, business rivals, people who smiled publicly while sharpening knives in private. I don't know, I admitted. Detective Hale studied my face. I believe you. Then he added quietly. But someone wanted that truck to lose control. A chill crawled down my spine. Because suddenly, the accident no longer felt like an accident at all. When I returned to Emily's hospital room hours later, I found her sitting upright, wide awake, silent, watching the window. She didn't notice me immediately. Instead, she whispered to herself. Too loud. I closed the door quietly. Emily still stared through the glass, where reporters crowded behind police barriers like birds waiting for carrion. Without turning around, she said softly, You don't want to tell me. I stopped. What? Detective Hale thinks someone planned the crash. My heartbeat lurched. I never told you that. She finally looked back. Her eyes were rimmed red from exhaustion. You didn't. A bitter smile touched her lips. You thought it. The room fell silent. I walked closer until I stood beside her bed. Can you really hear everyone's thoughts? I wish I couldn't. She pressed her fingers against her temples. It never stops. As if to prove her point, a nurse entered carrying medication. The woman smiled warmly. Time for your pain medicine. Before the nurse could do anything else, Emily whispered. You're worried your son failed another exam. The nurse froze. Excuse me. You think you should have stayed home this morning. The syringe slipped from the nurse's trembling fingers. She backed away as if Emily had become someone else. Without another word, she hurried out. Emily laughed once. It wasn't amusement. It sounded like surrender. You saw that? I nodded. I don't understand it. Neither do I. She lowered her gaze. I hear every passing thought. She looked toward the hallway. A reporter outside is wondering whether I'm disfigured. Another pause. The security guard wishes his shift would end. Then she looked directly at me. And you're wondering if this gift is actually a curse. I didn't deny it. Because it was. No human mind was meant to carry thousands of strangers' unspoken fears. The door opened again. Vanessa entered carrying flowers. She forced a bright smile. My superstar is awake. Emily looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then the smile disappeared. You knew? Vanessa blinked. Knew what? You knew someone had been threatening me. The flowers slipped slightly in Vanessa's hands. You deleted the messages. My stomach tightened. What messages? Vanessa turned sharply toward me. Emily isn't well. Emily ignored her. They sent anonymous warnings before every public appearance. She stared at Vanessa with quiet disappointment. You hid them because you didn't want sponsors getting scared. Vanessa's breathing became uneven. I was protecting your career. You were protecting your commission. The room turned icy. Vanessa finally whispered, You can really hear me. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Vanessa slowly sat down. Her shoulders slumped. There were letters. I stared at her. You never told me. I handled them. Handled. They looked like fan obsession. Emily's voice was barely audible. One letter said. She swallowed. If I can't have your light, no one will. A cold pressure settled in my chest. Detective Hale had been right. Someone had targeted her long before the crash. My phone vibrated. Hale. I answered immediately. We found something. I'm coming. No. His voice was unusually tense. Stay with your wife. What happened? The truck driver. A pause. He's dead. Every muscle in my body stiffened. What? He suffered cardiac arrest less than an hour ago. Was he alone? We're checking. His next sentence chilled me. Whatever this is. Someone is cleaning up witnesses. The call ended. I looked at Emily. She had already read my expression. The driver? I nodded. Dead. She closed her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice shook. There was another thought. What thought? Before Detective Hale left earlier. She hesitated. He was afraid someone inside the hospital couldn't be trusted. I instinctively glanced toward the hallway. Doctors, nurses, visitors, security. Hundreds of people walk these corridors every day. Any one of them could be listening, watching, waiting. A soft knock interrupted us. A young janitor stepped inside with a mop bucket. Sorry, I'll be quick. He kept his head lowered while cleaning the floor. Nothing unusual, until Emily suddenly grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her nails dug into my skin. Her face had turned completely pale. Ethan. Her voice was barely a breath. Don't move. The janitor continued mopping. Slow. Steady. Ordinary. Emily's grip tightened even more. I looked at her. She wasn't staring at the man. She was listening. Then tears filled her eyes. He's thinking. She struggled to breathe. He failed. The janitor stopped moving. Without raising his head, he slowly smiled. A smile no one should have worn after hearing words that had never been spoken aloud. Emily whispered the rest. He thinks. Next time, neither of them will survive. The mop clattered onto the floor. The man lifted his head. Our eyes met. He smiled wider. Then he ran. Stop him. My voice tore through the hallway before I realized I had shouted. The janitor's cart slammed into the wall as he sprinted toward the emergency stairwell. A security guard looked up in confusion. Sir, he's dangerous. The man shoved the guard aside with enough force to send him crashing into a row of plastic chairs. Visitors screamed. Flowers scattered across the polished floor. I ran. Behind me, Detective Hale's warning echoed in my mind. Someone is cleaning up witnesses. The stairwell door banged open. By the time I reached it, the footsteps were already descending. 3 flights. 4. Then silence. I burst outside into the hospital loading area just in time to see a black motorcycle weaving through traffic. The rider wore the janitor's uniform. No license plate. No hesitation. Only escape. 2 patrol officers rushed into the alley seconds later. He went east. One of them jumped into a cruiser. The sirens faded into the afternoon traffic. I stood there, breathing hard. The man hadn't looked frightened. He had looked amused. As if getting caught hadn't mattered. As if he had already accomplished something. Mr. Carter. Detective Hale approached from behind. I was downstairs when dispatch called. I lost him. I know. He looked toward the street where the motorcycle had disappeared. Professional. You recognized him? No. But I recognized training. He crouched beside the abandoned mop bucket. Inside were ordinary cleaning supplies. Except for one object. A disposable hospital visitor badge. Blank. No name. No photograph. No fingerprints, Hale muttered. He planned everything. I clenched my fists. He smiled. Hale looked at me. People like that usually do. Emily refused to leave the hospital room after hearing what the janitor had been thinking. She sat silently against the raised bed, staring at the doorway as though every person passing by carried another hidden knife. I closed the curtains. You should try to rest. She gave a tired laugh. Rest? Another nurse walked by outside. Emily winced. She's wondering whether I'll become insane. A doctor crossed the corridor. Emily closed her eyes. He thinks publishing a medical paper about me would make his career. I felt a knot tighten inside my chest. Every stranger had become an open book. And most books weren't kind. Can you? I hesitated. Turn it off? I've tried. She rubbed her temples. It's loud when people feel strong emotions. What about me? She looked at me for a long moment. You're quieter. I frowned. Why? You don't hide much from yourself. Her words lingered. You feel guilty. I do. You feel angry. I do. You feel afraid. I do. She nodded gently. Your thoughts don't fight each other. Then her expression clouded. Most people lie to themselves every second. A long silence settled between us. Finally, I asked the question I had been avoiding. Did you hear anything before the crash? Emily's breathing slowed. I've been trying to remember. She shut her eyes. I remember laughing. I remember checking a message. I remember the truck. Then, her fingers trembled. There was someone standing on the sidewalk. I leaned forward. What did he look like? I couldn't see clearly. But, her face slowly lost color. He smiled. The same word. Again. Late that evening, Hale returned carrying a sealed evidence envelope. I need both of you to see something. He spread several printed photographs across the bedside table. Traffic cameras. Street cameras. Store cameras. Every angle surrounding the intersection. Emily studied them one by one. Then she suddenly pointed. There. A man stood outside a coffee shop. Cap pulled low. Hands inside his pockets. Watching the intersection. Can you zoom? Hale slid over a tablet. Emily enlarged the image. The man's face remained blurry. But something caught her attention. The watch. What about it? It isn't cheap. Hale nodded. We checked. Limited edition. Only 300 manufactured. So find everyone who bought one. We're trying. Emily looked unconvinced. No. She whispered. Someone like him wouldn't buy it. You think it was a gift? I think. She stared harder. He wanted someone to recognize it. Hale's eyes narrowed. Why? Emily looked away. I don't know. But I knew that expression. She wasn't hiding information. She was listening. Listening to something inside her own memory. Just before midnight, the hospital floor finally became quieter. Visitors left. Lights dimmed. Machines hummed steadily. For the first time all day, Emily managed to fall asleep. I remained in the chair beside her bed, unable to close my eyes. Around 2 in the morning, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello. A calm male voice replied. You shouldn't trust Detective Hale. My body stiffened. Who is this? He can't protect your wife. The line remained perfectly quiet except for slow breathing. What do you want? I want you to survive. The caller chuckled softly. You've been asking the wrong question. What question? You keep asking who wanted the crash. My pulse quickened. The real question, the voice became almost gentle, is who benefited. The call disconnected. I immediately tried calling back. Number unavailable. I stared at the dark screen. Who benefited? The question refused to leave my mind. Morning arrived with a storm. Rain hammered against the hospital windows, turning the city into a blur of gray. Emily woke before sunrise. Not because she had rested. Because she couldn't bear the noise inside her head anymore. I heard dreams. She whispered it so quietly I almost missed it. What? The night nurse. She was dreaming while sitting at the desk. I frowned. You heard that. I don't think thoughts stop when people sleep. She wrapped both arms around herself. I don't know where other people end and where I begin. Before I could answer, Hale entered carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. You both look terrible. You don't. I slept in my office. He handed me 1 cup. I've got updates. Emily watched him carefully, then nodded. You're worried. Hale sighed. I am. He didn't even bother denying it anymore. We identified the motorcycle. Hope flickered inside me. Good. It was stolen yesterday. The hope vanished. No usable prints. No DNA. No cameras caught his face. Emily suddenly spoke. He's left-handed. Hale looked up. How do you know? He held the mop with his left hand. So. But when he ran, she mimicked the movement. His right arm protected his ribs. Hale's expression sharpened. Military. Or law enforcement. He immediately wrote something in his notebook. I'll have my team check. Watching them, I realized something. Emily wasn't merely surviving this curse. She was learning to use it. Hours later, another visitor arrived. A famous producer named Leonard Brooks. One of Emily's biggest investors. He entered with expensive flowers and an even more expensive smile. My dear Emily, I'm relieved you're safe. Emily looked at him for 3 silent seconds. Then her smile disappeared. You're disappointed. Brooks laughed awkwardly. I beg your pardon. You expected me to die. The room froze. Brooks slowly lowered the flowers. I think you need more rest. Emily's voice remained calm. You've already calculated how much money my unfinished contracts would earn after my death. The producer's face drained of color. I watched every tiny change in his expression. Not outrage. Not confusion. Fear. You. He stepped backward. That's impossible. Emily whispered. You've been buying shares through shell companies. Hale, who had just returned to the doorway, stopped moving. Brooks noticed him too late. The detective smiled faintly. Interesting conversation. Brooks forced a laugh. I should leave. No. Hale blocked the exit. I think you'll stay. Brooks swallowed. For the first time since the crash, someone else's confidence cracked. As Hale escorted the producer away for questioning, Emily suddenly reached for my sleeve. Her hand was ice cold. Ethan, what is it? I heard one more thing. What? She stared toward the rain-covered window. It wasn't Brooks. What wasn't? He didn't arrange the crash. I frowned. But he only planned to profit afterward. A chill crept through me. So someone else wanted you dead. She slowly shook her head. Her eyes met mine. No, they weren't trying to kill me. My heartbeat stopped. They were trying. She struggled to force out the words. To kill you. Outside the room, a loud crash echoed through the corridor. Then came a scream. Someone shouted. Detective Hale. I rushed toward the door. Hale was lying on the floor. A shattered ceiling light hung above him. Glass covered the hallway. It looked like an accident, But as I knelt beside him, Hale grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. His lips barely moved. They know. He coughed, blood staining his sleeve. You're getting close. His grip weakened. Then, with the last of his strength, he slipped a folded note into my palm before the paramedics pushed me aside. I unfolded it only after they wheeled him away. Inside were 6 handwritten words. Trust no one wearing a smile. The note felt heavier than paper should. Trust no one wearing a smile. I read it again as the paramedics rushed Detective Hale toward the elevators. Move. Clear the hallway. Blood streaked across the polished floor beneath the wheels of the gurney. The shattered ceiling light still swayed overhead. Hospital maintenance arrived within minutes. Too quickly, one worker muttered, "Old fixture." Another nodded. "Bad luck. Bad luck." That explanation settled too neatly over the scene. Emily slowly stepped into the hallway despite the doctor's protests. The moment her eyes landed on one of the maintenance workers, she stopped walking. Her breathing became uneven. "Ethan." I turned. "What is it?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the middle-aged electrician tightening his tool belt. "He's lying." The man looked up politely. "Ma'am," Emily whispered, "he isn't thinking about the broken light." The electrician frowned. "I don't understand." She continued, almost absent-mindedly. "He keeps repeating." She swallowed. It only had to miss his head by a few inches. The wrench slipped from the electrician's hand. It clanged loudly against the floor. His pupils shrank. He looked at Emily with naked terror. Without warning, he bolted. "Stop." 2 officers gave chase. The electrician shoved a medicine cart into their path before disappearing through a service corridor. Within seconds, he was gone. Another escape. Another professional. Another thread slipping through our fingers. Emily wrapped her arms around herself. He wasn't the one giving orders. "How do you know?" He was afraid. She looked toward the empty corridor. The man giving orders doesn't feel fear. By afternoon, Hale had regained consciousness. His injuries weren't life-threatening, but he was confined to intensive care. Only I was allowed inside. He looked exhausted. "That wasn't an accident." "I know. They loosened the bolts yesterday." "How?" He managed a bitter smile. "Hospital cameras covering that corridor malfunctioned." "Convenient." "Too convenient." He gestured weakly toward the chair. "Sit." I did. He lowered his voice. "I checked Emily's old threat letters." "What did you find?" "Nothing." I blinked. "What?" "They disappeared. Vanessa said she kept them." "She did." His expression darkened. "Someone removed every original document before we arrived." I leaned forward. "So we have no evidence." "We have something better." He reached into the drawer beside his bed and handed me a small flash drive. "A backup." "You copied them?" "I've been a detective for 23 years. A faint smile crossed his face. "I stopped trusting paper a long time ago." Hope returned for the first time since the crash. "What do they say?" "I haven't opened the files." "Why not?" "Because I wanted Emily there." He became serious again. "She may recognize something none of us will." That evening we gathered in a secured conference room inside the police annex attached to the hospital. Just 4 people. Me, Emily, Hale, a cybercrime analyst named Priya Chun. Priya connected the flash drive. Folders appeared on the monitor. 32 scanned letters. Emails. Printed screenshots. Anonymous messages spanning almost 2 years. My stomach twisted. How did I never know? Emily looked guilty. I thought Vanessa handled everything. The first letter appeared. Elegant handwriting. You belong to everyone. The second. Don't trust the man beside you. Emily glanced at me immediately. I never believed that. I nodded silently. The third message was different. Typed. No emotion. A bright star attracts hunters. The room remained silent as Priya opened more files. Some were childish. Others obsessive. Then, message number 26. Emily inhaled sharply. Stop. Priya froze. What is it? Emily stepped closer to the screen. The email contained only one sentence. The wrong Carter will pay first. My blood ran cold. The wrong Carter. I whispered the words aloud. Hill looked at me. Your family. I slowly nodded. My younger brother's name is Daniel Carter. Emily's eyes widened. No. She shook her head. Not him. She looked directly at me. They meant you. I hadn't spoken to my father in almost 3 years. Not after he publicly declared that Emily had turned me against the family. He believed fame changed people. Perhaps it had. But it hadn't changed me. It had changed everyone around us. Now, Standing outside my childhood home for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger. The front door opened before I knocked. My older sister, Claire, stared in disbelief. "Ethan, you're here. Is Dad home?" She hesitated. "He won't be happy." "I know." She stepped aside anyway. Inside, nothing had changed. The same photographs, the same furniture, the same smell of coffee and old books. Then came my father's voice. "If you're here because of television sympathy." He walked into the living room and stopped. His expression hardened. "I don't need reporters in my house. I came alone." "Good." His eyes narrowed. "You finally remembered you have a family?" Anger rose inside me, then faded. There wasn't enough energy left for old arguments. "I need to ask something." "What? Has anyone contacted you recently?" He frowned. "About what?" "About me." Silence. Too much silence. Claire slowly looked at our father. "Dad." He sighed heavily. "There were letters." My pulse quickened. "What letters?" "They said staying away from you would keep us safe." The room fell silent. "You never told me." My father's jaw tightened. "You'd already made your choice." "My choice?" "To live in her world." He pointed toward the television, where muted news coverage of Emily's accident filled the screen. "You became unreachable." Claire stepped between us. "Please. Not now." I closed my eyes for one brief moment. This isn't about old fights. It has to be. My father folded his arms. Every problem started after that marriage. No. I looked directly at him. The problem started because someone wanted us divided. Those words finally reached him. His anger softened into uncertainty. "You really think someone's targeting you?" Before I could answer, Emily suddenly gasped. She had been unusually quiet ever since entering the house. Now she was staring toward the hallway. "What is it?" She didn't respond. Instead, she walked slowly toward the bookshelf. Family photographs lined the shelves. Birthdays, graduations, vacations, normal memories. Then she stopped in front of one frame. A picture from 5 years earlier. Me, Emily, Claire, my father, and another man standing at the edge of the group. My father's longtime business partner, Victor Lang. Emily picked up the frame. Her hands trembled. "This man." My father looked surprised. "Victor, you know him?" "We've been friends for 15 years. Emily's face turned pale. "He was outside the hospital yesterday." Everyone froze. "What?" I couldn't place him. She stared at the photograph. He was wearing sunglasses. "But..." She looked at me. "It's him." I immediately called Hale. "Run Victor Lang." "Why?" "He may be connected." There was a long pause. Then Hale quietly replied. "I already did." My heartbeat accelerated. "And..." "He disappeared 6 months ago." Back at the police annex, Hale spread new files across the table. Victor Lang, age 56, former investment consultant, declared bankrupt 8 years ago. I frowned. My father never mentioned that. He wouldn't know. Why? Victor hit it. Priya typed rapidly. His companies were dissolved. New identities. Offshore accounts. She looked up. He's been moving money through shell corporations. Emily closed her eyes. He's calm. Hale blinked. What? When I think about him. She pressed her fingers against her temple. I remember hearing something. You heard his thoughts? No. Then what? I heard. Her breathing became shaky. Silence. The room stared at her. She continued slowly. Everyone has thoughts. Fear. Regret. Desire. But when I looked at him, it was empty. An uncomfortable chill settled over us. Hale leaned back. I've seen psychopaths. They still think. Emily whispered. This felt different. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anonymous caller's question echoed again. Who benefited? Not the truck driver. Not Brooks. Not Vanessa. They were pieces. Not the player. At 3 a.m, my phone vibrated. A text message. Unknown number. Check your mailbox. Nothing else. I drove home before sunrise. The street was quiet. My mailbox stood slightly open. Inside was a single envelope. No stamp. No address. Only my name. I opened it carefully. One photograph slipped into my hand. It showed me entering the hospital after the crash. Someone had been watching. On the back, 4 words were written in black ink. You're finally looking correctly. Before I could react, a slow clap echoed from across the empty street. I looked up. An elderly man feeding pigeons smiled pleasantly at me. For one fleeting second, our eyes met. Then his smile widened. Exactly like the janitor's. Exactly like the man Emily remembered before the crash. I started toward him. He tipped his hat politely and stepped directly into the path of an approaching city bus. Brakes screamed. People shouted. When the bus finally stopped, the old man was gone. Only a scattering of frightened pigeons remained. Someone had planned the distraction perfectly. As I stood in the middle of the street, my phone rang again. This time, the caller didn't hide his voice. It was calm, cultured, almost friendly. "You've done well, Ethan. Who are you?" A soft chuckle answered. "You're asking better questions. What do you want?" "I want to meet." My grip tightened around the phone. "Where?" "When your wife tells you the truth, she's too afraid to admit." The line went dead. I turned slowly toward my car. A terrible realization settled into my chest. The caller knew something even Emily hadn't told me, or something she hadn't yet remembered. The call ended, but the silence it left behind felt louder than any voice Emily had ever heard. I drove straight back to the hospital. Every traffic light felt too long. Every passing stranger became another possible face beneath a disguise. When I pushed open Emily's room door, she was already awake. She looked at me once. "You met him?" I stopped. "You heard that?" She slowly shook her head. "No. I saw your face." I sat beside her bed and placed the anonymous photograph on the blanket. Her expression changed immediately. "He was watching." "Yes." I told her everything. The old man, the disappearing act, the phone call, the invitation. When I finished, she remained silent for nearly a full minute. Then she whispered. I remembered something. My heartbeat quickened. "What?" "The day before the accident." She closed her eyes. "We attended a charity auction." I nodded. "I remember. There was a donor." "Who?" "I never saw his face. He spoke to me while everyone else was taking photographs." "What did he say?" Emily's fingers tightened around the blanket. "Fame makes people look at you." She swallowed. "Power makes people look where you want." The words settled heavily between us. "Did you tell anyone?" "I forgot." "You forgot." "I thought it was meaningless." She looked at me with frustration. Now I can't stop hearing his voice. A knock interrupted us. Priya entered carrying a laptop. I traced the anonymous number. "You did?" She nodded. "It bounced through 12 countries." My hope faded. "But," she smiled faintly, "whoever made the mistake used one local cell tower. Can you narrow it down?" "I already did." She turned the laptop toward us. A city map appeared. One building flashed in red. The Lang Financial Center. I stared at the screen. "Victor." Priya nodded. "Someone inside that building routed the call. Detective Hale insisted on obtaining a warrant before entering the building. It has to be clean. If we rush, they'll destroy everything." 3 hours later, we entered the empty office tower. No employees. No receptionists. Only silence. Dust covered the marble floor. "It looks abandoned," I whispered. "It was officially closed 4 months ago," Hale replied. "So why use it?" "Because abandoned buildings attract fewer questions." The elevator no longer worked. We climbed 12 flights of stairs. On the executive floor, every office stood empty, except one. The door at the end of the corridor remained slightly open. Inside sat a single wooden desk. Nothing else. "No computers," Priya murmured. "No files. No fingerprints." Hale frowned. "Too clean." Emily stepped inside last. The moment she crossed the doorway, she froze. "What?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly turned toward the wall behind the desk. "There." I looked. Nothing. Just dark wooden panels. Emily walked forward until she placed her palm against the wood. "They were standing here." "Who?" They argued. Hale exchanged a puzzled glance with me. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. I can almost hear it. "What?" She whispered broken fragments. "The husband." "Not yet. He has to choose." Suddenly she gasped. "No." Her knees nearly gave out. I caught her before she fell. "Ethan." "What happened?" There was another voice. "Whose?" "I've heard it before." "Where?" She stared into empty space. "At our wedding." No one spoke on the drive back. The implication was too disturbing. If the same person had been present at our wedding, then this hadn't started with the crash, or the threat letters, or Emily's career. Someone had been watching us for years. That evening, Hale received a call. He immediately looked toward me. "We found Victor. Alive. For now." "Where?" "He surrendered." I blinked. "He surrendered?" "He walked into a police station 20 minutes ago." "Why?" Hale's expression remained unreadable. "He asked to speak only to you." Victor Lang looked nothing like the confident businessman in the family photograph. His expensive suits had been replaced by plain gray prison clothing. His hair had turned almost completely white. The moment I entered the interrogation room, he smiled sadly. "Hello, Ethan. You know why I'm here." "I do." "Start talking." He leaned back. "You've always been impatient. I'm done playing games." "So am I." For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Victor sighed. "I never wanted Emily dead." "I don't believe you." "You shouldn't." He nodded. "But I never wanted you dead either." "Then why?" His eyes lowered. "Because neither of you were the targets." I felt my chest tighten. "What are you talking about?" "You've spent days chasing the wrong motive." He laughed quietly. "They allowed it." "They?" "The people I worked for." Hale switched on another recorder. Victor watched him calmly. "They recruit useful people. Investors. Politicians. Executives. And when usefulness ends." He made a slow cutting motion across his throat. "You worked for them?" "I managed money. Nothing more." "So why target us?" Victor finally looked directly into my eyes. "Because Emily shouldn't have survived." The room went completely silent. I clenched my fists. "You just said she wasn't the target." "She wasn't." "Then explain." Victor nodded slowly. "Her accident created something impossible." My pulse quickened. "What?" "Her ability." "Emily." "The voices." "The thoughts." Victor continued. "They don't fear witnesses. They fear someone who cannot be lied to." A chill spread through the room. "They know what Emily can do." "Yes." "They've known since she woke up." "Yes." I leaned closer. "Who are they?" Victor's expression changed for the first time. "Fear. Real fear. I don't know their names." "Liar." "I swear." "You expect me to believe that?" "They never use names. Only instructions." He reached into his pocket before anyone could react. "Stop." Officers grabbed him. But it was too late. A tiny capsule had already disappeared into his mouth. Foam gathered at the corner of his lips. "No." Hale shouted for medics. Victor's breathing became ragged. He looked at me one last time. With the last of his strength, he whispered, "Find." A violent cough interrupted him. "The recording." "What recording?" He smiled weakly. She already heard it. His eyes slowly lost focus. The heart monitor attached by the emergency team flattened into one endless tone. Victor Lang was dead. Again, another witness had been silenced. Emily listened quietly after Hale told her everything. When he mentioned Victor's final words, she already heard it. She suddenly stood up. "I know." "You know what?" I asked. "The voice." She pressed both hands against her head. "It wasn't memory. It was—" "What?" "A recording." Her breathing became faster. "At the charity auction, they played soft background music. But underneath—" She looked directly at me. Someone's conversation had been accidentally recorded over the audio. Hale immediately leaned forward. "Can you remember it?" Emily shut her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I only remember one sentence." "What sentence?" She slowly repeated the words exactly as she had heard them. "If Ethan Carter refuses, activate protocol mirror." The room became deathly still. Hale's face drained of color. He whispered, "I've heard that phrase before." "You have?" He nodded once. "It belongs to a classified investigation that was buried 7 years ago." Before anyone could ask another question, Priya's laptop chimed loudly. She looked at the screen, then at us. Someone had remotely uploaded a file into the police evidence server. No sender, no trace. The file name contained only 2 words. "Mirror begins." The evidence room emptied within seconds. "Disconnect the network." Priya's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I'm trying." The progress bar on the uploaded file remained frozen at 99%. "No external source?" Hale asked. She shook her head. "It came from inside." "What?" "Someone uploaded it from a terminal inside police headquarters." Every officer in the room instinctively looked toward the door. "Someone among us." Again, Priya finally isolated the computer from the network. "I've got it." The file opened. No video. No photographs. Only an audio recording. A man's voice filled the speakers. Calm. Measured. Disturbingly familiar. "If Ethan Carter agrees, protocol mirror ends." Another voice answered. "He won't." "Then create circumstances where refusal becomes impossible." "What about the actress?" "Collateral." My hands clenched into fists. Emily's breathing caught. The first voice continued. "The objective remains unchanged. Acquire the archive." The recording ended abruptly. Silence swallowed the room. Hale replayed the final sentence. Acquire the archive. Again and again, Emily suddenly whispered. I've heard that phrase. Where? She frowned. In my own thoughts. Everyone looked at her. I thought it was just noise. She pressed her fingertips against her temple. But every time someone connected to this case came near me, that sentence appeared. Priya slowly turned from her laptop. They weren't after your life. They were trying to find something. By evening, Hale had assembled every known piece of evidence. Photographs, threat letters, financial records, anonymous calls, the mysterious recording. Nothing pointed toward money anymore. Everything pointed toward one missing object. The archive. I looked around the conference room. Does anyone know what that is? No one answered. Then Emily quietly spoke. I think. She hesitated. I do. Every eye turned toward her. The night before the crash. I cleaned our study. I frowned. So, I found a small metal box. My heartbeat quickened. What box? It belonged to your mother. I stared at her. My mother died 12 years ago. I know. You never mentioned a box. Because. She looked ashamed. I couldn't open it. The room fell silent. I put it back. Where? In the old house. My father's house. We arrived just after sunset. Rain had finally stopped. The house looked exactly as I remembered, only quieter. Claire opened the door. Ethan, we need the attic. She didn't ask questions. She simply nodded. My father was waiting upstairs. He watched silently as we searched through old trunks and dusty shelves. Finally, Emily pointed toward a cedar chest. There. I opened it. Family albums. Old letters. A faded scarf. Then, a small steel box. No larger than a jewelry case. No keyhole. Only a fingerprint scanner. I frowned. This wasn't here before. My father stepped closer. It belonged to your mother. You knew? She told me never to touch it. Emily looked at me. Try. I placed my thumb against the scanner. Nothing. A red light blinked. Denied. Claire tried. Nothing. Then my father hesitated. Maybe. He pressed his finger against the surface. Green. A soft click echoed. The lid slowly opened. Inside lay a single flash drive. And one handwritten envelope. Addressed to me. In my mother's handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Ethan, if you're reading this, someone has already started looking. My vision blurred. Trust your own judgment, not inherited loyalties. The archive contains proof powerful people spent decades rewriting lives, identities, and fortunes. I copied everything before they discovered me. My pulse thundered. Never release it for revenge. Release it only when innocent people can finally be protected. At the bottom were 6 words. The choice will always be yours. I lowered the letter. No one spoke. Finally, Hale whispered. Your mother was the archivist. None of us slept that night. The flash drive remained sealed inside an evidence bag while Priya prepared an isolated computer with no network connection. If this contains malware, it won't escape. She inserted the drive. Folders appeared instantly. Thousands of documents. Financial transfers. False identities. Bribery ledgers. Witness payments. Court interference. Election funding. Corporate espionage. The scale was overwhelming. Emily quietly sat beside me. She wasn't reading the files. She was listening. After several minutes, she looked toward the hallway. They're here. Hale stood immediately. Who? The people outside. What are they thinking? She closed her eyes. Recover the archive. The exact same words. Hale drew a slow breath. They found us. The building alarms suddenly went dark. Emergency lights flickered on. Priya looked up sharply. They cut the main power. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Not hurried. Disciplined. Measured. Hale motioned for everyone to stay low. 3 officers took positions behind overturned desks. The conference room door handle moved once. Twice. Then stopped. Instead of forcing entry, a calm voice spoke through the wood. Mr. Carter. I recognized it instantly. The caller. We don't need violence. No one answered. You have something that belongs to us. Hale silently counted with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. The officers pulled open the door. The hallway outside was empty. Only a portable speaker rested on the floor. The voice continued through it. You've always mistaken patience for weakness. Then the recording clicked off. Priya suddenly shouted. The server. We turned. The isolated computer had never been connected to the internet. Yet every document on the screen was disappearing. One folder after another. Deleting itself. No. She frantically disconnected the drive. Too late. The final folder vanished. The screen displayed only one message. Archive successfully transferred. I stared in disbelief. How? Priya's face turned pale. It wasn't copied tonight. What? It started transferring the moment we opened the box. Emily slowly stood. No. Everyone looked at her. She smiled for the first time since the accident. A genuine, peaceful smile. They failed. Hale frowned. What do you mean? Emily looked at me. Your mother expected this. She pointed toward the envelope. There was another page. I unfolded the back flap. A tiny sheet of paper had been hidden inside. On it was a single handwritten sentence. The real archive is never stored where thieves expect. Follow the lighthouse. For the first time since the crash, I felt something stronger than fear. Hope. The people hunting us believed they had won. They had stolen only a shadow. The truth still existed. Somewhere my mother had trusted only me to find it. And for the first time, I realized this journey was no longer about exposing villains. It was about honoring the woman who had quietly protected countless strangers without anyone ever knowing her name. The lighthouse stood alone on a rocky stretch of coastline, 3 hours from the city. It had been decommissioned years ago. No tourists. No keepers. Only wind, waves, and silence. As I parked the car, Emily looked toward the sea and exhaled slowly. It's quiet. I smiled faintly. You mean the thoughts? She nodded. There aren't many people nearby. For the first time, she closed her eyes. I can hear myself. Hale approached with Priya and 2 trusted officers. No backup. He looked around carefully. The fewer people who know about this place, the better. My mother's note contained only one more clue. The light points downward. Inside the lighthouse, dust coated every stair. The lantern room at the top was empty. Nothing. No hidden compartments. No safes. We searched for nearly an hour. Frustration slowly settled over everyone. Priya sighed. Maybe we're interpreting it wrong. I walked to the center of the room and looked at the old lighthouse lens. The light points downward. Not the beam. The mechanism. I knelt beside the massive iron base supporting the lens. Unlike everything else, one bolt looked newer. I pressed it. Nothing. Then Emily quietly said, "Turn it." I twisted the bolt. A deep metallic click echoed through the tower. Part of the stone floor slid aside. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. No one spoke. Hale drew his flashlight. Stay behind me. The underground chamber was surprisingly dry. Shelves lined the walls. Boxes. Documents. Hard drives. Photographs. Hundreds of labeled cases. My mother hadn't hidden one archive. She had hidden an entire history. Priya stared in disbelief. This, she whispered, could expose hundreds of crimes. Hale slowly removed one folder. Inside were signed confessions, financial ledgers, original contracts, names, dates, evidence that had never reached any courtroom. Emily picked up a sealed envelope. Across the front, in my mother's handwriting, were 3 words. For Ethan only. I opened it carefully. Inside was a final letter. My son, if you found this place, then you chose compassion over anger. That means I was right to trust you. These records should never belong to one person. Not to governments. Not to corporations. Not even to our family. Truth becomes dangerous when someone owns it. Release it carefully. Protect the innocent before exposing the guilty. Justice without wisdom becomes another form of cruelty. At the bottom, she had written one last sentence. Live the life I couldn't. I quietly folded the letter. For the first time in years. I cried. Not because of fear. Not because of guilt. Because I finally understood why my mother had carried this burden alone. She had never been running from powerful people. She had been protecting ordinary ones. Suddenly, a slow clap echoed from the tunnel entrance. We turned. A tall man in a dark coat stepped into the light. No mask. No disguise. Just calm confidence. I was beginning to think you'd never solve it. Hale immediately raised his weapon. Don't move. The man smiled. The famous detective Marcus Hale. His eyes shifted toward Emily. And Mrs. Carter. Emily's face turned pale. It's him. The voice. The man inclined his head politely. My apologies for the accident. I took one step forward. You murdered people. I removed liabilities. You destroyed families. I preserved stability. His voice carried no anger. Only certainty. You call yourself civilized? I call myself practical. Behind him, several armed figures appeared. Not rushing. Not threatening. Simply waiting. The leader looked at me. Mr. Carter, give me the archive. I shook my head. No. He smiled. I expected that. For several long seconds, no one moved. Only the distant crash of waves reached the underground chamber. The leader studied me with unsettling calm. You've inherited your mother's stubbornness. You knew her. I respected her. You hunted her. His expression remained unchanged. She refused to understand compromise. I answered quietly. No. You refused to understand conscience. The smile disappeared. For the first time, his composure cracked. Emily suddenly stepped forward. No. I reached for her arm. Emily. She gently moved my hand away. I'm done hiding. She looked directly at the man. The countless thoughts surrounding us flooded into her mind. She trembled. Tears formed in her eyes. But she didn't look away. Finally, she whispered, You're afraid. The man laughed softly. I'm not. You are. Her voice grew steadier. You've built your entire life on controlling what other people know. She took another step. And now you're standing in front of the one thing you can never control. Silence. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Emily continued. You aren't thinking about winning. You aren't thinking about the archive. She looked straight into his eyes. You're thinking about the first person you betrayed. His breathing faltered. Only for a heartbeat. But it was enough. Hill saw it too. Now, the officers moved. The armed men hesitated. Not because of fear. Because their leader had. In that single moment of uncertainty, everything changed. A brief struggle erupted through the chamber. Weapons hit the stone floor. Boxes scattered. One attacker fled toward the tunnel only to find additional officers waiting outside. Hale had quietly called for support an hour earlier, keeping their position secret until the last possible moment. Within minutes, the confrontation ended. No dramatic shootout. No needless deaths. Only handcuffs, evidence, and the quiet collapse of people who had believed themselves untouchable. The leader sat against the stone wall, wrists restrained. He looked at me one final time. You think this ends today? No. I answered honestly. I think today is where rebuilding begins. He lowered his eyes. For the first time, he had nothing left to say. 6 months later, the investigations reached across the country. Judges reopened forgotten cases. Wrongfully convicted people were released. Officials resigned. Executives stood trial. Victims who had waited decades finally heard the words they deserved. We believe you. The archive wasn't published all at once. Following my mother's wishes, every document was reviewed to protect innocent people before exposing those responsible. Justice came slowly, but it lasted. Emily's strange ability also began to fade. Not overnight. Little by little. Each week the voices grew quieter. One evening, we stood together beside the sea near the old lighthouse. She smiled. I can barely hear anyone now. Do you miss it? She thought for a moment. No. What do you hear? She slipped her hand into mine. The waves. I looked toward the horizon where the lighthouse beam, restored after years of darkness, swept peacefully across the water. For so long, I had believed survival meant carrying every burden alone. I had been wrong. Real strength wasn't silent suffering. It was choosing truth without becoming consumed by hatred. It was walking away from revenge while refusing to walk away from justice. Emily rested her head lightly against my shoulder. The voices are gone. I smiled. Then what are you thinking? She laughed, a warm, genuine laugh I hadn't heard since before the crash. I'm thinking that we finally get to live. The lighthouse continued its slow, steady rhythm across the sea, no longer warning ships of danger alone, but reminding us that even after the darkest storms, light still finds its way home. Novel complete.